unusual Bible event, I will readily admit. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But it's in there, and I'm wondering if we could take it today and use it as sort of a picture or metaphor. A picture of our relationship as a church with church leadership. Well, you may say, Eric, well, that's you right now, isn't it? I guess it is. I guess it is. But whoever that may be within church leadership, relationship of the church to that of leadership. Now, one day, the church felt, and some of you may have seen this, it makes me laugh every time I see it. Some of you, one day a church felt that it needed to build a swing for the church children to play on during activities. And communication was a bit difficult within the church. Maybe the leadership didn't get it right. I think Chad knows where I'm going with this. And they all get all kinds of things, all kinds of mussed up and muddled up. So first of all, there's a mother of three thought this is what the swing should look like. Okay? That poor mother of three came up with this idea. The church pastor or whatever didn't communicate things properly. There was not the good relationship happening. But then, this is what the church board came up with. Of course, you know, anytime you get church boards and groups together, you know they get all things messed up. And then there was the adventurous church member. Decided this is what they thought the church swing should look like. Yeah, I'm not sure I've gotten on that one. And then there was the non-adventurous church person thought this is what the swing should look like. And I'm not sure which one of those you would grab onto, but this whole thing about church and church leadership and working together and understanding things is incredibly important. So we're going to understand now, this is what the church really needed. Okay? This is what the church really needed. Apart from all the various thoughts and the way things didn't get communicated. So we want to try and fix all that. We want to try and work together. We want to try and see how this can work properly. Looking at this particular passage, we want to sort of back up just a little bit. So we're going to look at being church the sequel. Being church in a way that we can understand how we can work together and accomplish and do what God's called us to do. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but this whole thing about Moses' staff has been interesting. I mean, ever since I brought up Mr. Charlton Heston, I'll never forget that little image. He got that staff in his hand. How it had actually worked in that film versus how it works in Scripture may not be exactly. However, this thing of Moses' staff, ever since, if you remember, back up on the mountain, when Moses first met with God there at the burning bush, you remember what happened? Moses was there with the staff. Moses was saying, well, how am I going to show them or prove to them that I came on your authority? What did God tell him to do? Take your staff and do what? Throw it on the floor, and then what happened? It became a snake. It became a snake. And sure enough, that's exactly what Moses did, or Charlton Heston did. When he first met, what was his name?
Pharaoh.
No, yeah, Pharaoh. Come on now. What?
Yul Brynner.
Yul Brynner, there we go. When Charlton Heston met Yul Brynner, he threw it down, became a snake. Yeah, Mick knows these things. But not only that staff was used throughout various places. Moses took that staff, put it in the sea, and the sea became blood. So that became a symbol of God's authority, of using Moses. And we need to remember that. Now it's interesting that there at the Nile, if you're familiar with the story, there at the Nile, when Moses did that with the staff, what happened to the fish? The fish died. The fish died, obviously. But just before this event, there was an event that the children of Israel were moaning, as they did. They were out in the desert and they said, we don't have any water. Not food yet. We don't have any water. And so God directed Moses to strike the rock. Out of the rock came water. So in that instance, the staff did not bring death, but it brought life. We're going to come now to this event, this unusual unusual event in Exodus chapter 17. And we're going to take this and draw a parallel. We're going to take this and make it a metaphor, a picture. Okay? So I want us to see in verse 8, in the first bit of verse 9, what's going on. It says, now Amalek, as the Jews came, this group, the Amalekites, said, we don't like these lot being here. We're going to boot them out. So what do you do? What do? You go up to battle. This is what they did. This is what they did. So Amalek came and fought with Israel in that area called Rephidim. Moses then said to Joshua in verse 9, he said, choose us some men and go out and fight with Amalek. Amalek came. The warriors came. Israel said, okay, we need to gather some men, go and fight them. And this is exactly what they did. So there's a battle going down there in the valley. So we're going to then say, draw this kind of parallel that use that battle and say that ministry, doing what we are trying to do, is kind of like that battle. Okay? We're going to try and draw that comparison. That ministry is a battle. Ministry is a battle. And we're going to give you a few reasons and a few levels on how it is a battle. First of all, the first level we're going to call on a spiritual level. On a spiritual level. That may seem obvious to you because there's many enemies. We know that Satan himself is the enemy. And we're absolutely convinced, we know that Satan will do anything he can to prevent us from doing what God's called us to do. By the way, Satan is real. I've said this 1,000 times. Satan is real. He doesn't run around in a red suit, by the way. A red spandex suit. Little horns out his head, and tail and a pitchfork. Okay, that's not the way it is. As a matter of fact, if you look in the Bible, the picture of Satan is what? As a roaring lion. He walks around masquerading as an angel of angel what? Do you know what it is? Angel of light. Would an angel of light be attractive?
Yeah.
Well, you better believe it. Better believe it. Do you think Satan's attractive? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And Satan's ways can be attractive. So we need to realize there are these enemies. We have our own flesh and our own sin that is an enemy that we need to deal with on that spiritual level. Our own spiritual health can be a battleground. That's why we said last week, in order to make this work, we've got to be individuals who is feeding on God's Word and learning and growing. And by the way, this is another one of my little pet peeves. Bible study is great, important, vital. But what's even beyond the Bible study is taking what you learn and applying it to what you do and who you are. Okay? So we have to be careful, man, to think that the end goal of Bible study is to cram our minds with facts and figures and who did what when and what sequence of things happened. Okay? I'm all for learning those things, but if it doesn't affect what we do and how we think and what priorities we make and decisions we make, then what's the point? What's the point? The Bible then says, knowledge, and I memorized it in the King James, knowledge puffs up. Knowledge makes arrogant, makes us arrogant. Can make us arrogant in 1 Corinthians. Knowledge makes us arrogant or can make us arrogant, but love edifies or encourages. So the point is, the knowledge of stuff can make us arrogant, but it's the actions of that. It's the result of what we learn is where the where the rubber meets the road. Where the rubber meets the road. I'll explain it to you later if you need that. Okay? Where the rubber meets the road. That's where it's at. That's where it's at. You may say, Eric, on the spiritual level then, all right, so as people come in, they're non-believers, so we try, are we responsible for them becoming believers? And the answer is?
Yes.
No. Okay, we're not responsible. We are responsible to offer teaching, We're responsible to be examples. Are we responsible for them to become believers? No, it's up to them, their decisions. But we need to make the pathway to introduce them to God. And I'm thankful, so thankful. It's not my ultimate responsibility. It's not my ultimate, how can I say? The word I'm looking for is requirement for them to become a believer. Because if that's the case, I would have quit this a long time ago because I would have failed miserably. Okay? So our job from a spiritual perspective is to be an example, to share the gospel, to be that light, to be able to give the good news to other people. Ultimately then it is their responsibility, their choice. Ministry is a battle on a spiritual level. Number two. Ministry is a battle on an emotional level. It's a battle on an emotional level. Some of us, as we've mentioned it before, some of us are people. Are you a people? Okay? Some of you are energized by being around people. We mentioned this before. Some of us, being around people for significant time drains you. Okay? And that's just our different kind of makeup. But beyond that, it's dealing with people, and people's issue takes time and energy, and that can be draining. Yeah? It can be draining. So that's part of the battleground. That's part of the battleground in doing what God's called us to do. So the question is, number one, if we're in this spiritual battle that's going on, are we equipping ourselves spiritually to be able to wage this spiritual battle? Number two, are we willing to invest some time and energy into people, even though some people can be difficult, right? So if we were to say statistics say that 50% of the people in this world are difficult, and if you're not the difficult one, then look either to your right or left, and that'll be the difficult person, okay? No finger pointing now, okay? No finger pointing. But dealing with people and all the various levels and layers of people can be draining. It can be draining. And I've had people tell me, and I understand, I've been there myself, say, Eric, I've tried to help someone and they've hurt me and things have happened and I totally get it, I totally understand. But my encouragement is don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. Because I've had to remind myself many times, am I doing what I'm doing for Steve or for Doreen or for Neil? Yes, I want to be a blessing. But ultimately, who am I doing it for? God. I'm ultimately doing it for God. Okay? We've got to maintain that at the very top level. Because if we do it for Miles or for Lisa or for Caroline or for Chad or whatever, if we're doing it primarily for them, when they disappoint us, and they will, what are we going to do? We'll pack it in. It's not worth it. And give up. That's why what we do has ultimately, at the very top level, has to be for the Lord, serving the Lord, understand that this is what God has called me to do. Yes, then we can say, I'm trying to serve Leanna or Bethany or Diane, of course. But there is that emotional level of the battle that is difficult. But then there's obviously the physical level. Because ministry takes time, takes energy, takes stamina. I mentioned this last Saturday at the meeting there with BEC folks, and I can't remember what it was. It was a relatively recent Messy Church sort of get-together planning meeting or something like that, and it was someone who was relatively new. They said, wow, I had no idea the effort that goes on behind the scenes. And this is true, okay? For anything that happens, I would say even for the 2-hour Messy Church, I would say from start to stop, I would say easily 25, 30 man hours. Man stroke woman hours, okay, are involved in a 2-hour 2-hour event. From all the planning to the preparation to all the things that we produce and the crafts and the food and the planning and the shopping and the cooking and the cleanup and all that stuff. It is a physical battle that's happening just like the battle that was happening down in the valley. Okay, so that's the reality. So if we're going to do ministry, if we're going to do Messy Church Plus, if we're going to continue on with Messy Church, if things are going to happen here, we have to realize that ministry is a battle. Doesn't mean negative. Doesn't mean negative. We just have to realize the reality of it. Now, I think most of you know, I just want to sort of make sure everyone sort of is on the same page. Come September, October, November, those 3 months, Lisa and myself, and Chase, but Lisa and myself are going to be in America because we are funded by individual churches in America. And I'm meant to go back every 4 years, actually, and shake a hand, thank you, da-di-da-di-da, that sort of stuff, okay? It's been about 9 years since I've been back, and so, long overdue, and Lisa's not seeing her family for a long time as well. So now, that's going to mean there's all kinds of opportunities for people to step in and do ministry, and do stuff. So we have to realize, to do it, there's got to be that spiritual battle. That spiritual battle is going to happen. That emotional battle will be happening. That physical battle will be happening. So we're going to come then into what happens here as that battle is waging down in the valley. There's what I'm going to call the journey. Second half of verse 9 into verse 10. Notice what happens. It says, now tomorrow, Moses is speaking, tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God. Remember that rod was a symbol of God's authority. I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. Verse 9. So Joshua did as Moses had said and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. Now that's interesting. That's interesting. How did that come about? Well, Moses said, I'm going to go to the top of the hill, but where does this Aaron and Hur thing come from? Well, you don't know exactly. But it was a journey up to the top of the hill. We don't know about the details why. I kind of wondered a little bit. Maybe the lift was broken. Moses was too old to go by himself. And maybe he needs someone on either side to help him up the hill. We don't know. Maybe the battle was too dangerous to risk it. Moses, you're our leader. We need you up where people can see you. But the reality is leadership in some form is a reality. Now, I've enjoyed speaking with people from Liana's country, Ukraine. Last time, 2 times I've gone. People, some of the older folk, who remember what it was like being under communism, under the time of the Soviet Union. Now, the whole idea behind communism was that everyone would be what? Equal. Is that true? Was that true? Was everyone equal? Why or how not? Was everyone equal? Well, if you talk to people, everyone had a job. Everyone had, now I'm sure it wasn't perfect, but here's something interesting. There's this very top echelon who had all the money and all the power. Were they equal with everyone else down in the working class? No. So even in communism, there is a level of leadership that had to be there. So leadership is a thing. It's a real thing. So here's the challenge now. Here's the challenge in verse 11. Verse 11. So it was, now I want you to get this. This blows me away every time I see it. Verse 11 says, and so it was when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. Isn't that a strange thing? That's a weird thing. I've never understood that. Never understood that. Now, here we have to make sure we get this right. It is not like in a football match. When Israel is winning, Moses says, yeah, go get them, boys! That's not the way it was. Okay? When the Rovers are close to getting a goal, what everyone stand up, oh, yeah, that's what they do, right? That's not the way it was. It says as long as Moses had his hands up with that rod in his hand, that Israel was winning. And when his hands got heavy, as they would, can you imagine what it'd be like lifting that rod up for potentially hours on end? On your own. How tough that would be. When his hands became heavy and he got tired, and when that rod was let down, then Amalek started to prevail. And we're continuing this whole image, we're continuing this whole picture on what it would have been like. So there it is, the help in verse 12. Notice what happens in verse 12. Moses' hands became heavy. So they took a stone, they meaning who? Aaron and Hur, took a stone, and they put it under him, and he sat on it. He was a geezer, got to remember. He was old. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady unto the going down of the sun. What an incredible thing. What an incredible thing. There it is. Aaron and Hur were there on top of the mountain with Moses. And Aaron and Hur saw what was happening, and we're just going to pick this apart for just a couple minutes. The battle would not have been 5 minutes, and if you've ever tried to do that. Now, Neil has done puppets. We've had this conversation. If you've got a puppet in your hand, and you're supposed to be up like this with a puppet, I mentioned this on Saturday, and your typical song is 3.5, 4 minutes, trying to do a puppet like this, holding your hand up with that puppet in your hand. By the time that 3 or 4 minutes is over, you feel like your arm's getting ready to fall off your shoulder. And we're talking 3 or 4 minutes. So Moses was there with that rod in his hand, holding that staff up. And it says, as it got heavy, and that rod dropped down, so it must have been several cycles maybe, of up and down and up and down, and prevailing and losing, and prevailing and losing. So Aaron and Hur steps in. A few things I think were important. Because I'll be honest with you, and by the way, this is not about, I do not ask for pity. I don't think I've ever asked for pity. I do ask to try and be understood. I ask for people to come alongside and help. I don't ask for sympathy, I don't ask for pity. But here's the reality. That sometimes ministry gets heavy. It gets heavy. Sometimes there's the physical side. Sometimes there's the emotional side. Okay? It's just the reality it is. I don't ask for pity. So please don't say, oh, Eric, I'll do this. Don't feel sorry for me. Because what happens if you feel sorry for me, then the minute that sorry for me thing goes away, then what happens? Then you go away. So I want us to try and imagine yourself in the sandals of Aaron and Hur for just a couple minutes this morning. Number one, Aaron and Hur, look at this help. They were aware of the problem. They saw what was happening. They saw that any time that Moses had that rod up in the air, that Israel was winning. And when Moses let down that rod, that the enemy was winning. They were aware of the problem. So within our church, are you aware of what's going on? Are you aware of what we're trying to do? And maybe if you're saying, Eric, I don't know what's going on. Well, maybe then it's my fault for not communicating it clearly or properly. And please let me know. If you're not aware of the challenges, if you're not aware of the battles that we're facing, then say, Eric, I don't know. Then maybe, like I said, I need to know these things of what's missing. So they were aware of the problem. But not only that, number two, they took the initiative to do something about it. They said, we've got an issue here. We see what's happening. As that rod is being let down, the enemy is prevailing, the enemy is winning, so we need to do something about it. They didn't sit back and wait until someone came up from the valley to try and sort out the problem. They said, listen, we're here. We can do something about it, and we are going to do something about it. That's amazing. That's amazing. And anytime someone says, Eric, can we do this and I'll take it on, my jaw about hits the floor. Because that's magic. That's beautiful. That's amazing. So taking the initiative on something is an incredibly important element of that whole recipe. Aaron and Hur then decided what needed to be done. They didn't fight about it. I mean, I don't know. I wish I had a video of this thing, but I mean, I can imagine. There were some various rocks, and maybe Hur ran over there and said, "Listen, we need to pick up this rock and get this over here." You think Aaron said, "No, I don't like the color of that rock. I think that rock's better over there." And Hur, no, this one's a bit smoother. I don't think they did that. I think they recognized the issue. They said, we need to do something about this. They grabbed that rock. They set it there. They put Moses on top of the rock. Hur said, Aaron, you get on this side. I'll get on this side. And we shall do what needs to be done. We shall lift up the hands of Moses, because that's what we see happening. And if Moses' hands are lifted up, then the battle is being won. And ultimately, isn't that what we want? Don't we want the battle to be won? If ministry is the battle, if reaching people for Jesus and seeing people grow is the battle, shouldn't we do everything we can to see that happen? They decided what needs to be done, but then they worked as a team. They worked as a team to support Moses to see that happen. And that is so key. Working as a team, working together, wanting to be involved, deciding what needs to be done, taking the initiative, all those things as a package deal to see God's way, for whatever reason, why God decided once thing, as long as Moses held out that rod, I don't understand the whys and wherefores, but to see that happen, to see them, to enable that to happen, was absolute magic. But then, notice the victory in verse 13. So Joshua and the army, we can imply, Joshua defeated Amalek with the edge, the sword, and his people there. The victory was won. The battle was won. And that may be a missing word there. Yeah, the battle was won. The battle was won because, why? Was it because Moses was up on the mountain? Was that the reason the battle was won? No. Was the battle won because the people down below were fighting? Was that the reason the battle was won? No. Was the battle won because Aaron and Hur were on top of the mountain? Was that the reason the battle was won? Why was the battle won? No. Yes, of course. Yes, because the soldiers were doing their bit down below. Moses was doing his bit up on the mountain. Aaron and Hur were doing their bit beside Moses. And when it all works together, then the battle was won. And I think that's important to realize. Everything working together. Everything working together. The battle's won. So now, I don't know that if there's... Is that the end of your bits, your papers? Yeah. Now, I just want you to we're going to take 5 minutes. Just a few minutes. Just a few minutes. And I put this out there, and I'm not sure if this will translate okay. And the question was, how can you be an Aaron? And the word I used last Saturday was this. How can I be an Aaron or a Hur? So because we're not sexist around here, I changed the spelling of Hur to H-U-R to H-E-R. So how can you be a he or a she to be able to be that kind of person, to be able to support the leadership, whether it be me, whether it be somebody else, to be able to see the battle won. Number one, I think it's important to develop the spiritual disciplines. Now, this is nothing new. We've been down this 1,000 times. That of being a Bible person, you don't have to be expert. I'm not asking anyone to be Bible experts, but to be into your Bible, to reading some. We've got Our Daily Breads back in the bottom there as you come in. To be doing something on a regular basis to feed yourself spiritually. That of prayer, to be able to grow your prayer life and fellowship, being with other believers. Now, this coming Thursday, we're starting something new. Trying to start a Bible study. And Mick came to me a couple of weeks ago and took the initiative. Thank you, Mick. The initiative. Now, we've been thinking about this before, but Mick took the initiative and he asked the question, I'm interested in Bible study. And those are amazing words. And so what we're gonna work this out is we're gonna do it on a Thursday evening at, did you guys talk? Okay. Okay. Propose 7 o'clock, but just be on this, watch this space if we need to nudge the time just a little bit. On a fortnightly basis, because we also got music to work out. And one of the realities is this. For our little group, okay, different ages, different stages in life. Chad and Bethany are young, and they're trying to figure out life. They're trying to figure out this marriage thing and how it works. And of course, there are no problems in marriage, right? Marriage is easy. It's easy. No problems, no fights. No. So they're trying to figure this out. And so we're going to try it on a fortnightly basis. For a lot of Wednesdays, we have a daytime group at Joyce's place. If you'd like to be involved in that, we'd love to invite you along. So my goal has always been to give everyone an opportunity to have some kind of small group interaction, because it's different than a Sunday, some kind of small group interaction and a place of service. Those two things have been my passion for all these years. Okay? So we want to enable you, to empower you to be able to be involved and do that. But to develop spiritual disciplines, and I think being involved in a little group of some sort is an important part of that. Eric, I can study the Bible on my own. Yes, you can. But it's a different dynamic when you're with a little group to be able to talk about things together. It's just a different dynamic. Okay? Ask God what He wants your part to be here in RCBC. We have a number of new people. I know I don't twist arms. No one is required to do this, required to do that. But the reality is we are limited by the number of people who are willing to go towards the center of that little picture over there. That is the reality. But please, don't jump in and say, well, I can do this, I can do the other, I can do everything. Because then the problem is you'll do everything for about a week or two, and you get tired and fed up and say, I don't want to do anything. That's the problem. Okay? So think about, what can you do? What time do you have? How much energy do you have? Okay? All those kind of things play into, and what is sustainable. That's incredibly important. What is sustainable? Now, we are planning, been talking about for a while, a baptism. Now, we've talked about it before, but here at RCBC, we baptize by immersion, okay? Not every church does that, I totally get it, but here we do. So yesterday, I'm thinking about how to do this. So yesterday, I was happening to be down at B&Q and saw that they had some hot tubs on offer. I said, well, I have one of those. So Chad, I need some help. He probably, yeah, Chad, yeah. Everyone else has some back issues. I got a hot tub in the back of the car, and I need to fetch it in. So the idea is, next month, toward the end of the month, so I've had a few people ask me about baptism. Okay, well, we'll talk about all this. But I think it'd be awesome for everyone who would want to either be baptized as a believer for the first time, or again. For example, I've already asked Chad to baptize me. That'd be my third go, actually. long story behind that. But the point is, as a church, we are almost kind of starting over again. Almost. And I thought it'd be a nice symbol to sort of say, yeah, I'm with RCBC. And we can talk about the membership thing, what that means. We do have a membership here, believe it or not. We do. Okay? Probably most don't realize that. We do have a membership here. There's no signing in blood. There's no, I must do this. Okay, this is a gentlemanly or a ladylly agreement. And this is what the church's responsibility to you. This is your responsibility to the church. That's all it is. Okay? And so the thought is to offer to anyone who has accepted Christ into your life, okay, you have become a believer, maybe years ago, maybe recently, but to say, I would like to be baptized as part of this, and to even be part of the church, join as a member of the church. So that's, we'll talk more about that in the next couple of weeks. That's sort of what is on, be happening. So Eric, what can I do in a practical way? Well, particularly during the time that Lisa and I are not here, I'd encourage you to be part of RCBC in any way that you are able to. Sunday services, we're going to have various speakers in, and Mr. Chad will be one of them. Mr. Neil is going to help us out with the Messy Church Plus thing. Will be happening at the end of the month. And we need to get that kind of rocking and rolling a bit. A Messy Church will still be happening in various shades, and Jesse and two of our Messy Church parents are going to help out with that. But there's church cleaning. There's the carnival thing we mentioned. There's the summer activities thing we mentioned. So now, there's all kinds of practical ways to come alongside and help lift up that rod. Now, please understand me. I will tell you this as truthfully as I can from my heart. Okay? I do not do, you must. I don't do that. Okay? I've never been an arm twister. I've never said all these kinds of things. The reality is, we are a small group. The reality is, I'd rather do a few things well than try to do so many things and get everybody frustrated. That's no good. And myself included, by the way. Okay. So it's all down to what do we have the man or woman power for, and what could we do? But I'm truly convinced that God has a purpose and a plan for all that He's doing. And I think we've got a really good group that's sort of now bubbling and percolating, and we have some that are not here today. But you know what? It comes down to the matter of the hearts. And are we, number one, are we being church sort of together, okay, like we talked about last week? And then number two, are we sort of coming alongside the leadership and sort of propping up and helping hold up that rod? Because the battle is happening there, but all the bits need to be happening all together. And when that happens, it's no limit to what God can do.